Let me begin by thanking all of you whose fingerprints are on the success that we celebrate today. And that certainly includes our very faithful staff on both the Judiciary Committee and on the House Administration Committee. Moments ago, H.R. 4 passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 219 to 212. Let me single out a few of my colleagues who were unrelenting in their advocacy. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and what can I add to what has already been said? Terry Sewell has been unrelenting. Jim Clyburn and Chairman Nadler and Cohen and Chairwoman Loughran, thank you for your leadership on this legislation. And Joyce Beatty, who just spoke a moment ago, and the CBC have been undeterred in our effort to pass this legislation. And the tenacious leadership of our Speaker, our Majority Leader, thank you so very much for all that you have done. In November of 1964, after the passage of the Civil Rights Bill, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was summoned to the White House. This story doesn't get told very often. Martin Luther King Jr. was summoned to the White House by President Lyndon Johnson to be commended for his civil rights leadership. He had just received the Nobel Peace Prize. During that meeting in the Oval Office, Dr. King thanked President Johnson for the recognition. King then asked President Johnson to please support a voting rights bill. Dr. King told President Johnson that a Voting Rights Act was needed. It was needed desperately in the South because elections officials were using the literacy test to deny the right to vote. King said that black communities needed a law that would give them the right to litigate discriminatory voting laws, and a law that would give the Department of Justice the ability to determine whether changes in voting procedures were retrogressive. President Johnson urged Dr. King to delay, to slow down, to delay this request. It was then that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis and the foot soldiers and others descended upon Selma to launch a brand new movement, the Selma to Montgomery movement. After the Edmund Pettus Bridge police violence and after the deaths of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Viola Liuzio, President Johnson capitulated. He called a joint session of Congress. I ask you to go online and take a look at the video. I did it today. He called a joint session of Congress on March 15, 1965. During his speech, President Johnson capitulated and he called for swift passage of a Voting Rights Act. Though the Voting Rights Act was filibustered by Southern senators, the legislation passed on August 6, 1965. The result has been nothing less than transformational. Our challenge, ladies and gentlemen, now is to demand immediate Senate passage of this legislation, which will update the formula and breathe life into Section 5. We expect 50 Senate Democrats to vote for passage. We have no doubt about that. But we are hoping for at least 10 Republican senators. And if we don't get those 10 Republican senators, we ask our Senate friends respectfully to make a rule change to allow passage by a simple majority. Remember this, Supreme Court justices can be confirmed with 51 votes. Legislation protecting the right to vote should have a similar rule. Thank you very much.